Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Fireside Chat on role of data science in driving digital transformation in life sciences industry. My name is Puneet Kaur, and I'll be host for this event today. Thank you so much for registering and showing up here for this event today. Just a couple of logistics things. I know we have your cameras and mics turned off, but if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat window and we'll address them as we go along. So just with that, I'm going to get started. Like I said, I'm Puneet. I'm a client partner with Tiger Analytics. I work very closely with clients, helping them execute their data and analytics strategy. Super excited to be here and looking forward to chatting with some of the great industry leaders we have on here today. The real benefit of technology and digitization lies in innovation and differentiation. Digital technology enables adoption of solutions and workflows that weren't thought to be possible before. Today, most industries prioritize data and digital transformation, and the life sciences industry is no different. So now to shed some light on how part of data science works in the life sciences industry, we're hosting this Fireside Chat today. We have an incredible panel of three amazing speakers who will be sharing their perspectives on how data science is now being used to revolutionize the life sciences sector and what's next in this space. And I promise this is the maximum you'll hear from me. And after this, you're just going to hear from the speakers. So without any further delay, I'll introduce first Mr. Suman Giri. Suman, if you could just come on the camera, that would be great. Suman is the global head of commercial data science at Merck Human Health. He leads various analytics and data science teams that support all therapeutic areas and markets within Merck's Human Health division. He's super passionate about designing responsible ML systems and solutions that are built to scale with an end user experience in mind. Welcome to the panel, Suman. We're super excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Puneet. I'm happy to be here.
Next, I would like to extend my welcome to Mr. Atul Sharma. Atul is currently playing the role of Principal Sales for Healthcare and Life Sciences Industry at AWS. He's an experienced healthcare executive, a certified internal medicine physician with an MBA in marketing and 19 plus years in industry experience in sales and account management in the healthcare and pharmaceutical domains. Welcome to the panel, Atul.
Thanks,
Great to have you here today.
I'm glad to be part of this Fireside Chat.
Thank you so much, Atul. Last but not the least, we have Mr. Asif Ghatala on the panel. Asif is the business unit head at Tiger Analytics. He primarily helps his clients to reorient towards an increasingly data-filled digital world. He leads a practice that designs and develops high-performance data ecosystems and combines them with artificial intelligence to equip businesses with real-time insights for decision-making. Welcome to the panel, Asif.
Thanks, Puneet. Glad to be here.
All right. I see we still have a few participants joining in, but we'll just continue with this chat because we do have a hard stop in about 54 minutes. Just a couple of things. We will be taking questions throughout this chat. Feel free to drop them in the Q&A window, and I have my team who will be kind of helping me go through those questions, and we'll be asking the speakers as and when we can during the discussion. We will also have a few poll questions, so please watch out this space with those as well. Right. We'll just jump right into the agenda with that. We know that the theme today is digital transformation, right? So we know digital technology investments drive growth, provide companies with the flexibility that they require to maintain future profitability. So Suman, we'll start with you today first, right? We know that COVID-19 especially presented life sciences businesses, especially with a serious need to evaluate the business models, come up with more flexible, inventive, cost-effective strategies. So what's your take on how this COVID-19 has kind of accelerated the digital transformation and what that meant for Merck?
Yeah, so great question. I think the digital revolution was happening pre-COVID as well, right? So COVID just accelerated it. And a lot of it was driven by kind of changing provider preferences. And a lot of it is like changing provider demographics as well, right? So now we have a lot more digitally native providers emerging into the scene. As a result, their preferences are changing. So one of the studies that I remember from McKinsey that came out recently said that roughly 63% of providers now prefer remote or at least hybrid engagements, right? So that change in preferences was already happening. Then obviously pandemic accelerated it because as a result of the pandemic, access to HCPs was limited. And what that means is we had a lot of kind of digital tools popped up And once some of the pandemic restrictions went away, the inertia still stayed, right? So people got used to this new way of working. And as a result, we are seeing changes in behavior. So that I think is the true accelerator. And then third is digital is the more cost-effective and maybe more impact-effective way to do engagement as well, because it gives you a lot more parameters and it gives you scale, right? So the commercial companies, especially commercial life sciences companies, are also seeing this. So early on the perhaps demand supply, if I kind of can give you that lens, that in the demand side, the audience is asking for something different, and on the supply side as well, the folks are realizing that, hey, there is something more impactful and effective here. So as a result of all of these three things, I think we are seeing a change in or migration towards more and more digital engagement strategies. And that's how I would maybe frame it.
Interesting. So, Asif, maybe you can touch upon how you're seeing these digital and AI strategies kind of changing across industries. I know Suman kind of talked about the life sciences space, but I know you kind of have experience servicing clients across the industries. So what's kind of some point of view from your side on that?
Yeah, I kind of echo what Suman mentioned, right? I mean, the key word is acceleration, right? So digital transformation, which Suman mentioned in life sciences, right? So that's been going on in all other industries as well, right? So one of the biggest shifts that I've seen, right, in the last 2 years is that move away from POCs and MVPs to actually enterprise scaling, right? So, I mean, it's interesting, right? We went into the pandemic and then coming out of it 2 years later, most companies seem pretty settled with what they want to do in terms of the digital transformation, right? So decisions around tech stacks are made, for the most part, decisions around the major use cases, the major data sources, all of those things are kind of made. I mean, obviously, new data sources will keep getting discovered, and you'll be operating around the fringes. You'll be adding more and more use cases will coming in. But for the most part, it looks like everybody has a settled core strategy in terms of what does data transformation or digital transformation mean to them. And then those core foundations are in place already, right? So now basically everybody that we talk to, most clients that I talk to today, they're talking about okay, how do we scale our digital transformation, right? So okay, the POCs and the MVPs have shown promise, but then we need to take it beyond those lab environments to enterprise scale where decisions are happening at scale, right? Mm-hmm. So again, one of the key things which not just for life sciences, for any industry, right? It's anybody who wants to scale their data strategy, they need to be able to, willing to collaborate, leverage the partners, and be able to learn from adjacent use cases, adjacent industries, and almost use that as Lego blocks to build solutions so that you can accelerate your journeys as well, right? For example, Suman mentioned did the digital engagement between HCPs and sales reps, right? That's one of the things that overnight that kind of engagement model had to change in the life sciences industry, right? But then if you look at some of the other industries which are more B2C focused, right, whether it be retail or travel or hospitality, right? For them, they have pretty mature playbooks in terms of how they map out journeys, how they have recommendation engines that at each touch point or as the moment of truth, as they're called in those industries, right? How do you engage, what message, what channel, and how do you influence behaviors? All of those things are they have pretty mature and evolved playbooks, right? So in fact, when we came in working with one of our clients, when they were trying to set up a patient management platform for their patient services team, right? So we were able to borrow some of our learnings from how we'd enable these kind of infrastructures in retail, in terms of a customer 360 and recommendation engines and all of those kind of things. We were able to borrow some of those learnings to accelerate their journey, creating those core components in terms of creating a patient 360, then building those recommendation engines in terms of, again, delivering the right message through the right channel at the right time and all of those kind of things to kind of accelerate that journey, right? So again, just going back to your original question, the biggest change I'm seeing is the shift from MVPs and POCs to enterprise scaling. And then the willingness to leveraging their partner network and collaborating to accelerate their journeys itself, right? So I hope that gives you a flavor of what.
No, that's very interesting viewpoint, Asif. So you touched upon the technology partners as well. So maybe we'll do a quick poll question here for our participants here. If I can have my team kind of post that poll question, that also read it out so that you guys know what we're asking. Of all the participants who joined us today, we would like to know which cloud technology is implemented in your organization today. Is it AWS, Google, Azure, or others? And others could be on-prem as well. So please go ahead. We'll give you about 30 seconds for you to respond to this, and then let's look at what insights come out. Very interesting. So I'll just read out the insights, right? We have about 56% of the participants have said that AWS, about 4% have Google, and 28% Azure, and about 12% others. Good for us. We have the AWS representation on this panel today. So with that, Atul, would you kind of mind shedding some light on what Suman and Asif just talked about? How is AWS kind of standing out in the life sciences industry today? How are you guys helping the clients, and what have you seen change since this COVID times?
Sure. Thanks, Puneet. So AWS, along with our partners, we are helping our software customers at all the stages of their digital transformation by offering them customizable or ready-to-deploy solutions that can expedite time to market. So there are purpose-built solutions from AWS, partners who are using the AWS tools and services that simplify the process of building and deploying innovative IoT, AI, ML, robotics, analytics, edge, to name a few, to achieve incremental improvements in operational efficiency, agility, quality, and sustainability. With AWS as the foundation for digital transformation, AWS partners can devise new and faster ways for industrial and manufacturing organizations to ensure business continuity while lowering their cost along the way. So we enable accelerated design, optimized operations, and we have also helped in reinventing the supply chains, especially during the COVID times. The industry was not ready for it. It was not called for, and we had to rework. And as we were shipping a lot of stuff, right, so we also had to rework right from at Amazon and then replicate it at our customer locations. So cloud infrastructure and cloud services can break down the common barriers and bottlenecks, which are their industrial and manufacturing processes, by handling the workloads and storage that modernization requires. For example, AWS enables access to disparate plant and machine data. AI and ML capabilities are applied to the real-time data needed for more precise, predictive, and preventive maintenance. I'm just taking that example, thereby helping to improve the overall equipment effectiveness, lowering the downtime, improving the batch yield, and manufacturing operations. With AWS, partners and customers can take advantage of the most comprehensive set of cloud services and solutions available with the highest standards of privacy and data security. I think I should also briefly touch upon the AWS Marketplace. Many of you may not know about it. So AWS Marketplace is a curated digital catalog that makes it easy for organizations to discover, procure, provision, and govern the third-party software. So you can find thousands of software listings across categories like security, business applications, data, and analytics. And these are across industries such as healthcare, public sector, financial and services. So you can also explore and buy professional services to configure, deploy, and manage your third-party software. With AWS Marketplace, you can shorten the procurement timeline, basically. So implement the controls you need to operate with confidence and enable your organization to unlock innovation. So I hope I addressed that.
Yeah, no, that was very interesting. So in terms of the use cases, right, when we talk about the pharma, there's drug discovery, there's development, there's manufacturing, supply chain you talked about. Let's talk about in the commercial space, because we also have Suman here. So I would want to know some of the use cases, Atul, which you would feel like are very key and important today, especially from a digital lens, right, under the commercial umbrella. What would those be? What are some of the trends you're seeing?
Sure. So AWS for Life Sciences, we basically unite the flexibility, security, and the computational power of AWS with the deep industry expertise that we bring across all the areas of value chain. I know you asked me to touch upon the commercial, but we are operating in the entire value chain, right from research and development, manufacturing and supply chain, commercial, regulatory and safety, compliance. So we have multiple use cases across each of these. Let me start with research, if that's okay, and then I'll get commercial as well, for example. Because especially because of COVID, we are seeing a lot of emphasis on research in terms of how new drugs can be discovered in a shorter period of time. Classic example is Moderna, which came up with the COVID-19 vaccine within 6 months, I would say, which was the fastest. That has never happened if you talk about the different stages of drug discovery, right? So customers are accelerating research through high throughput modeling and screening, research data management and collaboration. Customers can conduct more effective, inclusive and engaging clinical trials, and we can also streamline the regulatory submissions. In terms of commercial and medical affairs, we are collaborating with our customers on personalizing engagements. I think someone touched upon HCP and the patient journey, right? So we are also accelerating the collection and management of real-world evidence. Digital health initiatives are in progress. Customer 360 is a classic example. Patient and HCP engagement, he already spoke about. Adverse event detection, for example, and digital therapeutics, along with enhancing the security, compliance, and automating GXP, because anything you touch in commercial, it has to be GXP, right? Similarly, in manufacturing, for example, we are helping our customers to establish the data liquidity, which is a very basic and the foundation layer that you need in order to improve your supply chain resiliency by creating more manufacturing data lakes. And on top of that, you can do smart manufacturing by leveraging multiple services that we have. Example being a lookout for vision, lookout for equipment, which can help in reducing defects. Another example is Monitron, for example, which helps in predicting machine failures, especially during COVID, where you cannot have people traveling all the way from different geographies in terms of fixing. So you can leverage Monitron, which can help in improving the overall equipment efficiency. We also collaborated with the customers during COVID to make the supply chain more resilient and get better at forecasting models, factoring such events in future. So those are some of the things that we focused on during the COVID times, especially in the commercial space. That's where we're trying to help them in terms of personalizing these engagements.
It's very interesting, Atul. So I know I heard you talk about the HCP engagements and some of the interesting things you've done in that in the commercial space. So probably go to Suman with that. I know there's a lot of interesting work and a lot of importance which is laid in terms of finding the effective HCP engagement strategies, right? And so much so that I've seen all of these pharma companies now been adopting products along these lines. So Suman, what's going on at Merck in this space today?
Yeah, so first of all, it's a little bit ironic that we're talking about digital transformation and my Zoom is acting up. So hopefully somebody is looking at this issue. So a few things, right? I'm going to give you things we're doing. It's going to be a mix of things we're doing and things we're aspiring to do, right? So just take it with that lens. So everybody, like Asif has talked about the next best action, Atul touched about it. So just to level set for the audience, what next best action effectively means in commercial pharma is how do you use historic interaction, right, that you as a company have had with your customers to understand what their channel and content preferences and perhaps cadence preferences are as well, so that you can then personalize the engagement for the customer. Like that's effectively what NBA or NBE, next best engagement, means in commercial pharma. So that today is table stakes, right? Like I would imagine most kind of large pharma companies are doing that. The way we're moving the needle on this is we're trying to combine patient level kind of prediction views, right? So we have information about which patients, what kind of patients, where the patients are in their journey, and what the predicted outcome could potentially be, right? Especially as it pertains to adherence or maybe health outcomes. So can we take that information and put that as part of an engagement strategy for a HCP or a healthcare provider, right? So this is an integration of patient level insights into our next best engagement capability. So that's one key kind of innovation we're driving in this space. Second is there's a lot of apart from just engagement preferences, right, there's a lot of environmental variables that HCPs are making their decisions under, right? So cost effectiveness, formulary alignment, whether that be clinical guidelines for the facilities that they're associated with. So what are some of these constraints that isn't necessarily evident on the engagement and interaction side is something we're looking at closely to, again, craft out a more personalized engagement strategy for our HCP. So that's another way we're pushing the needle on the next best action space. And then the third one, excuse me, is more around quality of engagement, right? Especially in today's digital privacy conscious world, it's harder and harder to understand what does a web journey actually mean, because somebody might have their cookies blocked, somebody might be using iOS 15 where your email can't be tracked, right? So how do we put in the right kind of sensors in place so that we can gauge the quality of engagements, and as a result create a more meaningful engagement strategy for our HCPs is another way we're pushing the needle on the next best action, next best engagement framework. So that is kind of one way we're thinking about this, right? Now, closely tied to next best action is this concept of content strategy, content tagging, content generation, etc. Right? Because without understanding what your content is, you can't algorithmically kind of start recommending it. So we do a lot of work in automating our content tagging as well. So that's where a lot of advanced natural language processing, right, OCR, etc., gets used. And the way, again, this I would consider probably is table stakes for most large pharma cos. But the way we're pushing the needle here is now that we know which content is effective, can we use some of the new advancements in, let's say, Stable Diffusion and GANs and whatnot to kind of generate the first pass of what effective content could look like. So that is maybe a second way in which we are looking to push the needle a little bit. And then the third maybe thing I'll highlight is this concept of understanding the patients to identify and understand the HCPs, right? Because HCPs don't just exist by themselves. Like the reason they need to be engaged with is because of the patient portfolio that they are associated with. So we're doing a lot of advanced machine learning and data science to fully understand the patients, right? The patient journey, so that then we can understand at what settings is the HCP, who is effectively our customer, interacting with our patients, so that then we can craft a meaningful engagement strategy for them. So these are maybe some large categories of spaces where we are using what I would consider advanced data science and machine learning to drive a more meaningful digital engagement.
This is very helpful, Suman, right? So we know this whole industry is evolving to this really data-driven decision making, right? So Asif, all these use cases which Atul and Suman touched upon, we know that these need really robust programs, if you will, to even make them successful, to have the leaders kind of see the value these are generating. So what would you say are some of the common themes which you see across the board for some of these digital and AI programs? Or what is the secret sauce, if you will, to make these programs successful? And how do you kind of help the clients today?
Yeah, so I mean, when I think about it, right, I mean, successful programs probably come in many different shades, right? So it's easier for me to start thinking about where I have seen programs fail and what were some of those reasons, and then probably flip it to see if I can see some common patterns, and then maybe use that as a guidebook for how to run successful programs, right? Like, again, in now it's like almost common knowledge, right? Like any digital strategy or any data program needs to have sponsorship right from the top, right? So the leadership, the executive leadership almost sets the tone, right? So for companies which are data driven by design, it's a different matter, right? But for most companies which are trying to evolve, it's a new way of doing business, right? You're almost challenging established norms, telling them that your decisions will be made based on what data tells you, right? So that's a big shift from people who have been in the industry, especially for like, let's say 15, 20 years, right? So for any digital transformation, data transformation to meaningfully impact the way business is run, I mean, obviously the leadership sets the tone, right? So you have the data strategy and then the vision for the program, right? So again, then you immediately closely linked to that is how do you define success, right? Like what does success look like? What are you trying to impact through this program, right? So again, those definitions of success could need to be established at the program level, like what are you trying to do? And then again, obviously at individual initiative level as well, right? So like each of those initiatives Is it linked to some business metric? Are you trying to improve revenues, customer acquisition? Are you trying to optimize your risk profile? All of these different things, right? So there are many shades in which success can come, but then you need to be able to link that to it. Then obviously, the next level becomes more tactical, operational, where you're like trying to optimize your investments in people, process, technology. Different companies are starting at a different mix. So their journey in terms of like how do they optimize all of that will be different. Again, that's one piece. I mean, that's one piece of the puzzle where I feel most companies do a good job of, like, in terms of making sure that they hire the right people, they invest in the right technology tool stack and all of that. And then again, have like reasonable process to govern data and make sure that they can support the different initiatives that are underway, right? So I think that part is taken care of. But then one critical piece where I've seen like a lot of programs fail, which I think a lot of companies take for granted, is the whole change management aspect around this, right? So you could build the shiniest, fanciest object, like the coolest data platform that supports like machine learning at scale and all of those different things. But then if you're not able to handhold your practitioners onto the platform, convince them of the value of using the new platform, right? So you end up with something which is really cool, but nobody uses, right? So, and that's something which I've seen multiple times over across many of my clients, right? So platforms which are built ready for use, but not many users, right? So change management is something which is very critical. And then again, once you do that, ongoing monitoring, enabling users to use that. I mean, you had the business cases, you had like metrics that you were going to impact and influence through the use of these platforms, helping them on the journey till they get comfortable that, okay, whether it be dashboards or whether it be like predictive models, just making the users comfortable with the new way of doing business, right? So when you start doing all of that, then again, obviously there's increased adoption, there's increased belief in this new way of doing it. And then obviously it becomes a virtuous cycle where more and more use cases are getting onboarded, more and more users are getting onboarded, and then almost becomes a self-propelling engine, right? Again, I mean, I don't know.
Super interesting points. No, Asif, super interesting points. I'm probably going to go back to Suman because I know Suman, you do a lot of podcasts, right? And not advertising your podcast here, but I did hear in one of your podcasts effectively talk about the change management. And you had a very interesting perspective on this change management where you talk about it as both from a data science, the people who are actually doing it, the data science community, as well as the business user community. So what's your take today? How is this change management? How do you see it on ground? And what do you think needs to change for it to start moving a little faster, if you will?
So, first of all, I'd like to challenge the statement. I don't do a lot of podcasts. I will appear at one, maybe a year, right? Second, change management. So I think, here's how I think about change management, right? So let's talk about why change management is even needed. So it's perhaps more relevant in certain kinds of industries than others, right? Industries that are tech native by design, right? Like what Asif said earlier. It's just part of their DNA, right? Like an Uber or a Facebook the company is a tech product, right? So machine learning, data science is part of their core offering. So there, perhaps it's not as big of a adoption issue, right? It's more of a design consideration. Like have you built the architecture and solution in a way where it lends itself to an end user experience that is your customer. Now, then there is other kinds of industries, perhaps like a second type of industry is where you're dealing with real-time data, right? So there too, I think you have to be more technologically advanced, right? So there too, a lot of the solutions have to be integrated with like real-time decision making. Maybe a Target or a Walmart is an example. Change management perhaps isn't as large a consideration. And then there's a third type of companies. And again, this is not a hierarchy, like this is just the third kind of company where the core product is not tech, right? You're not dealing with real-time data. Right? And I would classify most healthcare companies in that bucket where you have the luxury of making decisions in batch mode. And primarily the decision makers rely on their domain expertise. Now suddenly comes along this data science, machine learning, like AI or / technology that is supposed to make their lives easier, better, faster, stronger, what have you. Now that is where a lot of the friction is, because like this lack of fundamental understanding of how it works, right? Why it works, and how does it enable them to do their jobs better. Part of that is understanding how this fits into their existing workflow. More often than not, workflows need to be redesigned to enable something new. Part of it is just the human resistance to being told what to do. Nobody likes being told what to do. Like I speak for all of us here. So that I think is the big barrier, right? So the way companies in the third category do it wrong is they build a solution on the side, and then once it's ready, they come and kind of introduce it to the end users, right? And that is the if there's one wrong way to do this, like that is it. The way you want to do it is by having the user at the center of it, right? Like the end user be part of the user experience from the get-go, perhaps even design from the get-go. When you map out the existing process, have their input on how it fits into their workflow, give them clarity on how does this work? Like, what does it mean for them? There's a lot of work and effort in explainability in AI today, right? So we need to leverage a lot of that as we look to put this as part of somebody else's workflow and have the initial UX focus group users be the champions that are going to then enable your AI solutions down the line. Now, a lot of this also is an ops consideration, right? So in the third third category of companies, you don't have strong ops muscle that you might have in a real streaming or a tech company. So part of it is also the technological design needs to be thought through so that it lends itself to integration into downstream applications easily. But a big component of that is also people, right? So just the ops infrastructure and maybe people kind of alignment is how I think about change management, especially as it pertains to adoption of AI technologies.
Some really interesting points there, Suman. We do have a few questions from the audience. Maybe we can take a couple of those before we move any further in this fireside chat. I'm going to read as I see. There's a question here on my window. Pandemic brought in remote engagement with health specialists, but only limited to verbal and video consultations. What about other opportunities like remote diagnostics or introduction of IoT devices? So I think maybe Suman or Atul, anybody who wants to take a stab at responding to this one. The question was around when do we see these IoT things also kind of picking up pace for the life sciences sector?
So that's a question for me.
Yeah, Suman. You want me to, I can put it in the chat window. Atul, if you also have any points, please feel free to add.
Sure.
Sorry, Puneet, you're asking me to respond to this question right now,
yes,
right?
Yes,
or
yes.
type it out. I'm sorry. Sorry.
No worries. Very good.
So I think the question seems to be around like healthcare in general, so remote diagnostics and introduction of IoT devices, right? So that is perhaps less of a life sciences question, more of a generic like healthcare provider interaction question. But just being a practitioner, having been played in different healthcare kind of industries over the course of my career, what I'll say that is that the remote, like telehealth had its biggest boom like in the past 2 years, right? So remote diagnostics perhaps might not be the way to frame it, but at least remote consultation, especially in areas where it lends itself easily to, like dermatology, psychiatry, etc., that has just like exploded as a result of the pandemic. Now, there are some places where you need biomarker data to actually do effective diagnosis. So obviously there is a component of kind of in-person visits, but follow-ups, etc. Like there's always, I think we have now successfully gone through the tipping point where it's impossible to go back, right? I'll never go back to my HCP's office and wait there for like an hour just for them to look at my report. Like I would rather schedule a telemed consultation. So that I think is done. Now, as far as IoT is concerned, so IoT was all the rage like 2014, 15, right? Like that is where like we were talking about smart homes, like smart devices that can monitor your health. I think a lot of it has been let down by regulatory and compliance frameworks, right? So there is no, and also maybe lack of standardization, right? So I can speak to it from, because this is what I did my graduate education, the PhD in, is like smart homes and IoTs, and there's no standard agreed upon way for devices or scalable way for devices to talk to each other, right? It's not regulated. Is it privacy preserving? That's a consideration that comes up in healthcare, right? So all of these are things that need to be ironed out. Yes, there are devices that can talk to each other. Yes, there are smart devices that we probably engage with on a day-to-day basis. But I think there's some foundational infrastructure and regulatory infrastructure that needs to be tackled before we get to see a lot more IoT devices being used for remote diagnostics. That is at least my opinion.
Thanks,
you,
Suman.
Yeah, Atul, do
sorry,
you
Puneet.
want to add to it? Yeah, please go ahead.
Absolutely. So there's a lot happening when it comes to remote diagnostics. Whether it's coming up with new devices, new applications to monitor patient health. There are multiple things which have come up in terms of new iPhone apps or devices that can integrate with iOS or other devices as well. At Merck, let me give a classic example of the smart glasses. I think it's live at all locations. So if anything breaks down in manufacturing, person can use smart glasses to consult a person sitting thousands of miles away, right? And then the machine can be fixed, preventing downtime. IoT on shop floor is being used in a pervasive way where new technologies are being leveraged. I spoke about lookout for vision, lookout for equipment. Those are some of the things which are IoT specific, right? And Monitron, you stick the device to a motor, right? And it will tell you when it's going to fail on your iOS interface. Some of those things. From a cloud perspective, we are helping customers from an HPC, high performance compute, as we call it, which basically enables workloads in basic research, data transfer, integration, diagnostic medical images, for example, high content screening, digital pathology, MRI, PET scan, X-ray, CT scan. We're just doing a lot of work from that perspective. Health Lake was something which we introduced earlier this year that you can take leverage of. Medical image rendering in real time, for example, right? We have the AWS data sync where you can transfer data for storage or processing between on-prem or cloud storage solutions. You can improve the identification and pattern classification in medical images with the machine learning capabilities that you can that AWS SageMaker brings to the table. So a lot is happening when it comes to IoT and the question that you asked. So you'll see some of these things that we will also talk at reInvent, which is our annual event that we do in Vegas every year. Close to 50,000 people would be there end of November, early December. New functionalities will be introduced as well. So
I think these things are kind of important to keep that momentum on the innovation, I believe, going, right? So on that note, Atul, just a follow-up question. I do have somebody from the participants asking also that, there are a lot of other commercial cloud computing solutions coming out from your competitors. What is AWS trying to do to stay competitive today and kind of be the differentiator still to be chosen partner?
Sure. A very common question that comes up. So I would say our customers have really have come to really appreciate the way the AWS culture is, which is totally different than what other cloud providers are. We are a startup, we are an enterprise, and it's typically a long-term decision that our customers are looking to make when they engage with us. We are unusually customer focused, I would say. Most of the big technology companies are competitor focused. They look at what the competition is doing and they try to one-up the competition. And that can be a successful strategy at times, but it's not what we do. So 90% of what we build is driven by what customers tell us. And 10% are things we hear from our customers where they may not be able to articulate exactly what they want. But we try to read in between the lines and we invent on their behalf. So we are the pioneers, I would say. We like to hire builders who look at customer experiences that are flawed, then figure out how to reinvent those. In a space which is moving at lightning speed, you would like to partner with the company that has the most functionality. And when I say most functionality, where we have more than 200 plus services that we have to offer to our end clients. So that looks very attractive, I would say. And we are long-term oriented. You won't see our folks show up at customers' door a day before the end of the quarter or end of the year, right? And not to be seen again for a year. So we are trying to build relationships and a business that lasts longer than all of us, I would say. So you do this by doing what is right for the customer over a long period of time. So, and there are additional reasons that I can talk about, but in the interest of time, let me just quickly touch upon functionality. I touched upon most functionality that we bring to the table when it comes to compute or serverless compute, databases, storage, innovation. Fastest pace of innovation, I would say, that we are building new products and services on. The largest community of customers and partners, 100,000 partners from over 150 countries, and 70% are headquartered outside the US. Most secure, 300 security compliance and governance services and features, 98 security standards, I would say. I can go in detail. And lastly, I would say most proven operational expertise that we bring to the table in terms of maturity, reliability, and we've been doing it for 16 years. And that is something internally we say there's no compression algorithm for experience, and that's because you cannot learn certain lessons until you get to the different milestones in scale.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Some very interesting points, Atul. There, the words I'm hearing, right? Just if I were to think of few buzzwords: innovation, time to market, agility, all of that. So with that, I'm probably going to go to Asif, right? In today's world where we are seeing disruption all around, an idea comes, it needs to be quickly executed, needs to be set up for scale. There's a continuous feedback loop which needs to be set up. It's all very fast, right? So how do you feel like is the right way to do it? What is the secret sauce to helping clients establish this new long-term new, right? Because it's always changing. Are there any pillars? Are there any frameworks? How can we just help our clients kind of stay ahead?
Yeah, thanks, Puneet. Good question. And intentionally, I'll make this response a little bit provocative, right? So basically, I mean, with the likes of AWS and everybody, right? So compute and infrastructure is no longer the bottleneck, right? So it's easily available, like maybe at like a tenth of the cost it took like maybe a couple of decades ago to do something similar, right? With all the investments that companies are doing in taking an idea from a POC through to scaling, right? Like there's so many companies like ourselves who work with our partners to enable that, right? Like how quickly the pipelines get automated, deployments get automated, how quickly things get pushed to production, monitored, and all of that, right? So we're bringing in some efficiencies. Obviously, talent continues to remain a bit of a bottleneck, but then we are able to bring in some efficiencies, like things which probably took 10 people in the past, we're able to get it done with maybe 2 or 3 people now, right? So there are some efficiencies coming in as well. One of the things where actually as a practitioner, a consultant that cuts across many industries where I see, right, like the ideation pipeline is kind of becoming the bottleneck, right? Like right now we have the infrastructure, we have the people, the ability and the tools in place to like take ideas through from a POC through to production. But almost always we walk into a new client or a new industry, we know that there are a handful of use cases that will come up, and those are the ones that we'll spend most of our time talking about, right? Like somehow people are like compromising on these new areas or new use cases that need to see the light of day, right? So somehow either that's not like entering the top of the funnel for it to see production, scaling, and all of those kind of things, right? So that's one area where we feel like companies could do a lot more in terms of like data democratization. People talk about citizen data scientists and all of that, enabling that whole analytical ecosystem where people are able to do the first level of exploration, first level of experimentation, come up with like multiple candidates of use cases, which they could then force the more advanced analytical teams to like see how the merit of taking these cases to enterprise scale, right? So that the ideation stage, the conceptualization stage is becoming a bit of a bottleneck. I think that's one area where organizations could think about like how do they keep that funnel flush so that we can push the boundaries on what is possible with AI and data science, right?
Very interesting, Asif. So it's very interesting, right? So on this ideation, again, based on my experience, I work with a lot of clients and I see some of the clients have these dedicated R&D, research and innovation groups, right? So I'm probably going to go to Suman if he's seen such sort of things at Merck where you have to have competing priorities and obviously are always constrained with the resources at hand. How do you kind of try to strike that balance of keeping the lights on, but also not compromising on the research and innovation aspect of it? Because we know that's how you will stay ahead. So how does Merck manage it today, and how do you do it as a leader?
Yeah, so I think the basic premise that at least I approach this with is innovation is not something you can do on the side. Right? It's not something like you can ask 5 people to go and innovate, right? And then they come with amazing things. Like that's not how it works. It has to be baked into your day-to-day way of working, and there needs to be some way for ideas to organically emerge. So I think the language I use with our teams is, if you're familiar with the Peter Thiel book, like 0 to 1, right? How do you take something from nothing to something which is a company? Like what Asif is talking about is that the bottleneck is going from 0 to 0.1, like not even from going from 0 to 1, because from 0.1 to 1, it's easy, right? Like once you have the momentum, then it's easy to scale. Like there's a lot of investment, and you can partner with the right kind of strategic partners to scale ideas. But how do you take things that are in people's minds? Somebody says, hey, this could be a cool thing, and make it something that people can get excited around, is where like we think very deliberately around. So we call it deliberate innovation and incubation, right? So that is 0.1. I do have an organization that is dedicated to research and like operations, but their job is not to come up with ideas. Their job is to work with the teams that are working on what you can call, let's say, keep the lights on, or foundational work, right? So there's the value preserving work, but out of that will come up something that is game changing, right? So how do we kind of enable some of these game changing ideas to gain momentum is what the research and operation groups focuses on. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But at least we are putting the foundational layers in place so that as a result, innovation can happen. Innovation will never happen by just throwing money or people at it. It's a mindset and a culture issue as well.
Some really interesting points there, Suman. So on that note, I'm going to run a poll for the audience, probably on the same lines. You're going to see one question pop up. I'm also going to read that out for you guys to know. Today, in an increasingly competitive business landscape, efficiency game changers like AI and big data are fast becoming industry essentials. What do you think the life sciences business today are leveraging the technology for most? Enhancing existing products, creating new products and services, or making processes more efficient? Where do you think is maximum resources or maximum focus today? We'll just leave this on for another 30 seconds and then look at the insights.
I'm actually quite curious to know what Suman thinks about this too. Maybe you can answer it at the end, Suman.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's an option missing here, right? Which is like keeping the lights on, like doing the foundation work.
We assumed that, Suman, that has to be there. All right, so interesting insights here. So we have the 64% of the participants saying that the resources are being directed towards making processes more efficient. About 29% think that we are enhancing existing products, and about 7% feel like, which is creating new products and services. And I believe that is in kind of line with the hypothesis which Asif had on the dry funnel for the ideation stages, if you will, kind of. So that kind of adds up. All right. So on that note, Atul, anything from your side to add to how the firms can better start thinking about these resources? Are there any specific solutions which AWS has and offers which can help pharma companies kind of expedite their innovation strategies? Are there any specific solutions which they can use?
Sure. So Puneet, customers can collaborate with AWS Life Sciences partners, I would say, to drive innovation and digitalization. I spoke about the AWS Marketplace, which is a curated content where you have thousands of partners listed with their own solutions, custom-built solutions, I would say, that are ready to be deployed that the customers can use. But I would say we are driving digital transformation with leading companies in part because of the history of developing industrial solutions for Amazon Fulfillment Center. That's how we all started. Because AWS was born from complex automation and factory operations at Amazon. So we do understand the needs, the unique needs of industry, whether it's pharma or healthcare or software, right? So this deep knowledge is something that AWS partners, I would say, can carry over into their own solutions, not only in terms of their access to the AWS expert guidance that we provide or the tools that we provide, but in terms of the AWS partner program itself. To ensure the quality and effectiveness of partner solutions, AWS created AWS Partner Paths. The AWS Partner Program basically requires software partners to complete the AWS Foundational Technical Review, or FTR as we call it, which means that every solution they provide customers is validated by the AWS solution architects. As a result, the AWS partners have a proven track record of helping businesses transform their industrial operations with the most comprehensive set of cloud solutions, which are secure and sensitive industries. There are also additional programs that the partners can leverage in terms of the AWS competencies. It's called the AWS Competency Program that helps them to demonstrate the specialty knowledge that they can bring to the table. This robust library of industry-specific competencies include industrial software, IoT, migrations, and a lot more, I would say. So AWS brings the credibility of industrial cloud service leader and the proven expertise in organization safety and productivity. So we are helping customers through a variety of use cases, including digitizing processes to reduce errors, using computer vision, Internet of Things, monitoring stock safety, boost productivity, and lastly, a lot of focus on sustainability these days. So these are some of the areas that we are helping customers with. I already touched upon the AWS Life Sciences Competency Partner Program. So that's how I think
sounds really interesting, Atul. Yeah, it's good to hear from the technology standpoint what we have available and upcoming. So Suman, with that, I'm going to probably come back to you and ask you in terms of and also we're pressed for time here and sticking to the theme of digital today, right? What would you say are some of the upcoming trends or something which you are excited to see from a disruption standpoint with life sciences flavor, right? What are the few things on the digital side you see like are upcoming or will be the next big thing, if you will?
Yeah, so digital itself is a next big thing, right? So I think this transition, anything that facilitates this transition, I would definitely kind of pay close attention to. On the data science side, this concept of data-centric AI, right? Because we spent the last decade making our algorithms smarter, but only to realize that without the right data, we can't actually do much, right? So I think there is a push back to the source a little bit, and then you'll hear it termed as data-centric AI. So that I think is a movement that will follow closely, and we've started mimicking some of that through kind of teams like data product teams. You know, so this concept of data product, which can unlock a bunch of different use cases, et cetera, is already kind of making it to the mainstream. Some of the things like having a product mindset around anything that you do. Data science isn't a thing by itself. It is one of the tools you use to enable a business use case, and you have to integrate it with downstream applications that people interface with and use, right? So how do you create that product lens around data science or digital is maybe another trend. And third one I'll maybe just quickly talk about is more around the shifting landscape. Like the web landscape is changing a little bit. I talked about privacy, like cookies are being harder to track, emails are getting harder to track. There is this whole movement towards Web3, which may or may not materialize, but it's still out there. It's a strong enough movement that you can't ignore. So as a result, tomorrow, the way we do engagement is going to change. You can't just rely on third-party tracking. Like you have to have a first-party strategy to collect and interact with your customers and then drive engagement out of that. So how like that, I've not seen a lot of maybe innovations as much as I would like to see in the space. Definitely not in the life sciences, but like even in the tech companies, there isn't a lot happening here. So that is maybe another trend that I would watch closely. And then closely tied to this of the privacy preserving AI, like synthetic data generation, federated learning, transfer learning. So all of these are also components that will facilitate this migration, right? So these are maybe some other buzzwords that I'll throw into the mix.
And probably just one more closing question on this to you, right? If you were to give me a wish list, what is your wish list for you to stay ahead of this game, right? As a data and AI leader, I'm pretty sure you want to make or have a game plan. You can share this with us or not. how is Merck planning to stay ahead of this disruption? Is there a game plan in place? And if it is, what does that look like?
So I think talent, obviously, right? Without talent, you can't do anything. You can have all the ideas you want, but unless you have people to execute on it, like nothing's going to happen. And part of the talent is partnerships, right? Partnerships with Tiger Analytics or an AWS to kind of help break some of the barriers. But I think the bigger barrier today is we need to rethink our regulatory infrastructure, right? And I won't use a life sciences example, I'll use a tech example for you, right? So I lived in Pittsburgh for the longest time. I'll tell you, there were self-driving cars. I could order an Uber and a self-driving Uber would come in, pick me up and leave me somewhere, right? But obviously there was a driver in there, but he wasn't doing anything. He was just there to kind of, in case anything went wrong. So the technology exists for us to drive without human intervention, but the regulatory infrastructure does not exist, right? Who buys insurance for that car? I don't know. Like, if who's liable for the damages? I don't know. So all of that hasn't been thought through, right? So as a result, like I think Uber pulled out of Pittsburgh a few years ago, and there are no self-driving cars anymore, at least from Uber. Actually, they sold off their ATC business, so I don't know if there's any Uber self-driving car anywhere. So the analogy of that, if you take it to life science and healthcare, similar things are happening, right? Like you have amazing point solutions. But then when you look at the infrastructure, we're at least a couple of decades behind. As a result, a lot of things we can do have not been unlocked, right? So we are taking a deliberate approach to look at what are some of these choke points, what are some of these bottlenecks, so that we can free up the true potential of technology and people to drive innovation.
It's superb, Suman. I know we're almost at the mark, so I do want to be mindful of everyone's time here and conclude this session right on dot. So any call to action from all you speakers today for the audience who's joined us? Any call to action for all the participants today? Atul?
Thanks, Puneet. Thanks for having me on this quite interesting conversation. Look forward towards continuing the partnership with Tiger and with Merck. Thank you so much, Puneet.
Thank you so much, Atul. Asif, anything from you?
No, I think it was a great discussion. I mean, it's a fascinating space. There's so many ideas which we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg. So this is a fascinating space. We're going to see a lot of innovation happen. So just anybody who's on this call, anybody who's interested in following it, I think they should keep a close eye for what AI and data science will do for the life sciences space. And it was a great discussion. I know we covered a few topics. There is lots more out there. If there's any future opportunity to engage with this group on a similar topic, would be glad to do that again. Thank you, Puneet.
Thank you so much, Asif. Any final thoughts from you, Suman?
Thanks for having me on the panel. I appreciated the dialogue. Also, for 50 people who took time out of the day to listen to us talk, I appreciate your time. We're hiring at Merck, so if you're interested, reach out.
Tiger is also hiring on that note. Asif, any call to action for the participants here? We're always hiring. But like I said, thank you so much all for joining us today. This has been a really great session. Some really interesting viewpoints, and I truly appreciate Atul, Asif, and Suman for joining today and sharing your perspectives. Please do reach out to us if you have any questions after this session as well. And once again, thank you all for joining today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.